Hi everyone, back to Evermore YouTube channel. It's Chris back with the Aftermath. This is the show that we do once the dust has settled from the instant post-match reaction that we always do live after the Newcastle United's games. Obviously, we lost this most recent game to Fulham 2-1 at St James's Park. Second time in a row we've been done at St James's Park. Not particularly great, especially for a team that's chasing Champions League football and hopefully the Carabao Cup this season. So the Aftermath is always quite refreshing, I feel, because when you jump on post-match, everything's raw, intense, immediate, and you sometimes maybe don't see things in the clear light of day. So you go away, you consume some other people's content as well, some great content out there about the game, some level-headed processes, some not so level-headed processes. So I'm kind of coming to my conclusion now. I've had a little time to breathe and think about the Fulham game and what it means moving forward for the football club as well. So I'm going to get into it right now. So first and foremost, the game against Fulham, just a poor performance, I think, from the team overall. The minds looked elsewhere. I've heard a lot of people say this as well. When you look at the game, you say, yeah, it's a poor performance. If you watched our preview, I said I thought Eddie Howe should have changed things up. I thought he should have freshened a couple of positions to keep the lads fresh for Arsenal on Wednesday night, not Tuesday. A lot of people keep saying Tuesday, it's Wednesday. Don't go on Tuesday, guys. There'll be no bugger there. Go on Wednesday. So it's Wednesday night against Arsenal. And I thought he could have freshened it up. I thought we could have seen, Kieran Trippier coming in right back for Tino. We could have seen Lewis Miley coming into midfield for Joe Linton or even Joe Willock from the start of the game. I'll get onto Joe Willock in a minute, by the way. A lot of things going on with Joe Willock that I'm not particularly pleased about, but I'll get into that in a second. But we could have made some changes. Joe Linton hasn't looked himself for weeks and weeks now. He really, really hasn't. He's sloppy, so sloppy on the ball. He's as bad on the ball, as he is good on the ball. He gives the ball away way too much. When you're in a midfield three with two brilliant technicians of the football like Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes, Joe Linton's lack of ability with the ball is showing. Certainly in a game where a team will allow you to have some possession to do something with it, not when you're just up against it all the time. You're trying to hit them on a break through transitional play, like you're playing against City and Arsenal and teams like that, where you're going to absorb the pressure. Joe Linton's going to smash into people, destroy people, win the ball back, and give it to a Gordon or an Isak or someone or a Murphy and do something. That wasn't this game at the weekend. That wasn't Bournemouth either. They allowed us to make mistakes. They allowed us to give the ball away. But more than that, Joe Linton's tacklings look rash. He's looked very leggy. He's looked very tired. He's down breathing heavy. He's holding his ankles. He looks like he needs a rest. But this manager's biggest weakness is rotating the squad. Now, Eddie Howe is a great coach. There's no doubt about that at all. All the doubts were early on in the season for him. We're all dissipated when he had a really good run of form and managed to change things. Putting Tonali in that six was the best thing he could have done for the team. It changed the whole picture, the whole dynamic of the situation as well. He made big, tough decisions like taking Kieran Trippier out of the equation and putting Tino Livramento in from the start and starting Lewis Hart left back. It all seemed to balance things out. But for everything that Eddie Howe does well, his biggest weakness is squad rotation. This was his biggest weakness when we were in the Champions League. If you remember, me and Mark were doing videos about this, or the content creators were doing videos about this. He was playing the same lads week in, week out, game after game after game. It didn't matter if it was the Premier League, if it was the Carabao Cup, if it was the FA Cup, if it was the Champions League. He was playing the same fucking team week in, week out. And players were being burned out. They were getting absolutely wiped out. Injuries crept in. We had a massively injury-ravaged season, and players were dropping like flies. And one of the big reasons for that is the manager's inability to rotate the squad. We'll get into PSR and player recruitment in a second. I've already done a video about this, but this all intertwines into this situation. But we've called this video the Aftermath up for the Cup. And going back to the mentality, that was the problem with the lads, I felt, on Saturday. Their mind was on the Cup on Wednesday. They couldn't get it up for the Fulham game. And Fulham took full advantage of that. And massive credit to Marco Silva and Fulham for doing that. Fulham are a decent side. Some people said they're a bunch of rejects or misfits or raggy dolls, but they're good players in there. There's absolutely quality in that side. Iwobi's a good player. Traore can turn on when he wants to. Jimenez is a great striker. At one point, he's been linked to Arsenal, Man United. After that head injury, he kind of slipped back a little bit in terms of on that radar, but he's a very good centre forward. They were missing some good players as well. Harry Wilson probably would have got a goal. I'm sure yesterday as well if he'd been playing. But they made subs, brought it on, and they changed things. So that goes back again to the thinness of the squad, which I'll revisit in a second. But going back to the mentality, I'm disappointed that the lads seemed more interested in Wednesday than they did on Saturday. Now, Wednesday's a massive game. And the way things are looking, Wednesday could be the biggest game of the season for us. If we manage to get that result on Wednesday, get to Wembley for the Carabao Cup final, we'll have to play either Liverpool or Spurs. That's not going to be an easy game regardless of what you think of Spurs. certainly Liverpool are tremendous this season. But it'll be the second cup final in the last 3 years for Eddie Howe and that squad, and they should be better mentally for it than they were against Manchester United when they basically struggled to beat a really poor Manchester United side that won the Carabao Cup relatively easy at the end. So it's a huge game on Wednesday, but these players needed to show up for Saturday. And that's where I think Eddie Howe has dropped the ball a little bit here. He was saying that Fulham was the biggest game, in his press conference. He said Fulham's the biggest game of the season, not Wednesday, Fulham. It's all about Fulham. And then the lads turn up and they just don't look like they're at it. He's acting like he couldn't be bothered. Gordon didn't really get into the game a great deal until the goal. Tonali, I think, did well in midfield. He was trying to cover Joe Linton's arse half the time because Joe Linton was so poor. But again, it goes back to Eddie's inability to take off the players. And, I was watching Craig Hope's video and apparently he put it to Eddie, why didn't you make the changes? And Eddie said he looked at the bench and he didn't feel that he had the players on the bench to change the game. And that's maybe a dig upstairs. And I think Eddie Howe's right to have a dig upstairs because they haven't backed him in the transfer market. But Eddie also has to take some of the responsibility for this too. Like I said in the other video, is you can't hold on to players for as long as you are Eddie and then just expect to get more money to sign players, because the way the PSR and FFP bullshit rules work, and they are bullshit, but the way they work is you have to trade players. You look at a prime example of a team in the same position where we are, Aston Villa. Aston Villa are on the verge of signing Marcus Rashford and I think Asensio from PSG and possibly even Joe Felix. That's 3 players with Champions League experience, 3 top players, that we would probably welcome into this Newcastle squad as well. Creativity, pace, goals, ability. Forget Rashford's attitude at the minute. There's a player in there, there's no doubt. He's growing stale and toxic at Manchester United and needs a breather. But the fact that Newcastle United aren't even anywhere near this equation, can't even talk about these deals. Why is that? It's because we haven't sold players. We've kept on to players. And the fans are just as guilty at times as Eddie is for the over-sentimentality to these players. Oh, lads, the lads. When we finished in the Champions League positions, we should have sold Almiron, Wilson, Longstaff, even Trippier when they were right at the most sellable asset point. That's what Aston Villa did. They sold Diaby. They sold John Duran recently. They sold Douglas Luiz. Them 3 alone fetched in nearly 200 million quid for Aston Villa. And that's why they're able to spend in the market now. That's why they're able to bring in Maldron from Dortmund and Rashford from Manchester United, Asensio from PSG, whether that's a loan to buy a deal or I don't know. Joao Felix, yeah, I understand you might go, fucking hell, Chris, don't want him. He's a bit of a dickhead. I understand that, but the kid can play. He's got abilities, no doubt about it. Could he do a job for us on the wing? No doubt about it. I'm sure he could. Could he give us some goals and creativity? Absolutely he could. Attitude's questionable. Yes, maybe the no dickhead policy and all that, but that's not the point. Aston Villa sold players so they can buy players. It's not great. I'm sure Unai Emery would have wanted to keep those players. He would have wanted to keep Diaby, Duran, and Douglas Luiz, but he couldn't, and he knew he couldn't. With the shape of Duran, for example, I think the attitude was wrong. And, Saudi Arabia buying everybody else's players. They don't buy any of ours. They bought Alan Saint-Maximin way below the market value. And I understand the extra scrutiny involved in that, but that doesn't help us either. All these other clubs who are balancing PSR and able to trade and buy players, half of the players, the huge wage earners, have been fucked off to Saudi Arabia, something that we can't seem to do. I don't understand it. It drives me absolutely fucking mad, but I've gone off on a little slight semi-rant there. But this is a big reason why we're not active in the transfer market. Mismanagement of the situation with regards to player trading upstairs and down in the dugout area with Eddie Howe. If Eddie Howe has said he doesn't want these players to leave and they're vital and key to his squad moving forward, then Eddie needs to understand modern day football will not allow you to do that to everybody, Eddie. Yes, there'll be 7 or 8, 9 core players you don't want to lose. I'm talking about, maybe Pope, Botman, Bruno, Tonali, Isak, Gordon, these players you don't want to lose. But the rest of the players you might have to trade on, and you might have to bring in other players, to replace them, on lesser money, get guys coming at the end of their contract. Be smart, but be clever with it. Like Jonathan David at Lille right now on a free transfer, 12 million quid, whatever it may be. They're the kind of signings that you need to do. But Eddie holds on to these players way too long. We're talking about new contracts for Dubravka, who was getting sold until Pope got injured. For Fabian Schär, who looks finished, legs are gone. His passes are completely red. Everybody drops 3 or 5 yards and wins those crossfield balls now that he hits. He runs out of defence dribbling and he gets closed down and puts us under pressure. Players like that. Wilson's been broken for 3 years. Should have sold him. Almiron should have sold him. He's not offered a positive impact to the squad for ages. But who's keeping hold of these players? Who wants new contracts for them? It isn't Paul Mitchell. He's only been here 10 minutes. It's Eddie Howe. And Eddie Howe has to take responsibility for that. But nobody will put that on him. The fans won't put it on him, and the press won't put that on him. So Eddie Howe gets a free pass. He doesn't get a free pass off me because I think he needs to stop being so over sentimental to players and understand there's a sad part of football. You've got to move players on. Fuck me. He moved Elliot Anderson on, and he's twice the player Sean Longstaff is. But I don't understand why that happened either. The Minter one, I get. He never played for the club. You move him on. I get it. But the Longstaff one over Anderson, I don't get that at all for me. Terrible move. Absolutely awful move. But he'll never have to answer for that because nobody will put it to him. But going back to the Fulham game, the lads' mentality was way off. If Howe is saying that it's a huge game, why aren't the players understanding that and reflecting the manager's mentality on the game? That concerns me. If the players are just off going, you know what, fuck this, get Fulham out of the way. The big one's midweek. That's not good from the players. But also when you look at the bench, going back to what I've just been ranting about, there is no depth in squad. It's abysmal. This is the third transfer window that Newcastle will not have added a first team player. And Paul Mitchell came in, and yes, he's very much cutting a divisive figure right now. A lot of fans, myself included, he come in, swinging it left to right, a little bit cocky, a little bit arrogant with all his best in class, reputation behind him. I'm yet to see it. If he does nothing in this window, again, I think he's on the back foot once again. I want to know what he's doing. Everyone's talking about this. Oh, Newcastle are going to have a huge summer. Are we really, though? What happens if the targets we're going for, other teams sign? What happens if, because we don't sign somebody in this window, we have no depth, we have no game changers like we had yesterday on the bench, same against Bournemouth, we have nobody to come on to change the game, we lose too many games and we don't finish in the Champions League? What then? Who's going to sign for us then if there's no Champions League football? Is it Bremer going to sign for us? Is he going to go to Liverpool or Arsenal, or Chelsea or something like that, or even abroad, somewhere else where he can play top-class European football because we haven't got it? It's okay saying Newcastle are trying to type a £60 million deal for Brian Mbeumo now for the summer. Then, unless you sign a pre-contract, then it's all just words. It's all just nonsense. He might not sign for us. If you're going to sign Mbeumo, do it now. Fuck it. Bite the bullet and do it now. Chuck an extra 10 million quid on the price and get him in the January window because we need him. There is no doubt about it. We need him. But no, we're going to wait till the summer. We're going to roll the dice and gamble on this wafer-thin squad. Then fair enough. But you look at that bench once again, and there is no game changers there. If this football club is gambling on Harvey Barnes and Callum Wilson coming back and staying fit, staying in form, that is a massive gamble, and they're more naive than I thought. Mitchell's saying it was a broken system before. It's even more broken now. Whoever's making those decisions, you need to give your head a wobble. Just go look at both players' fitness records at this football club. Never mind their goals, which are a brilliant record for both of them, to be fair. Go look at their fitness records and tell me you're going to bank on them to saving the season, and I'll tell you you're naive to your face. Over a coffee somewhere, I'll even buy it. Fuck it. Right? But going back to the game itself and the Arsenal game and what it means, the lack of mentality from the players to switch on and sort that game out was disappointing, massive disappointing. And the inability for the manager to make a change, a positive change, when you could see the game was slipping. Even when we were 1-0 up, you could see Fulham were going to get back into this game. I think Eddie Howe even admitted that in his post-match comments by saying that the athleticism didn't look good. But you look at the bench, and you haven't got quality on there, yes, but you've got some players who could come in and maybe do a better job. And the biggest one for me was, let's keep a hold of the ball. Let's run Fulham tired. Let's pass it between ourselves and just kind of slow it down a little bit and then start hitting them on the break with the pace. Louis Miley was the best player for that. I thought Louis Miley should have started the game. He didn't even bring Louis Miley on until the game was gone with 5 minutes left. And then he put Willis Sula on the right wing. Was that a message to the upstairs? Absolutely. But if the upstairs are telling you can't have a player because there is no money because we didn't sell any players, then the 2 years are just having a standoff, really. It's the squad that's suffering. He doesn't seem to have the confidence to promote the youth academy into the first team squad. You don't see Sanusi on the bench, who, yes, he's raw. He's rawer than a fucking lump of sushi, but at least he's got pace. He could drive into the box and win you a penalty, maybe get you back into the game or something like that. Doesn't want to bring them in. Doesn't want to bring in these other reserve team players who have started, likes of Harrison, and I think Hernandez is even out on loan now. So you just want to bring in these youth team players into the first team pitch. He wants to work with this core of players. And Miggy's gone now, so there is no replacement for Murphy. So Murphy could have the worst game he's ever had in his life, doesn't even have to try, and there's nobody to take his place the next game. So that breeds complacency within the squad as well, which is a massive, massive problem, and that is a real mismanagement of the squad. situation by the manager and the board as well, because when you're in a position when a player doesn't think he's going to be dropped, doesn't matter how he plays. I know Murphy always works hard. He might not make the right decision all the time, but he works hard and he runs hard, and maybe that's what Eddie Howe is banking on, really. But it's very, very disappointing that the club look like they're going to shut this window with nobody else coming in. As talk of Lloyd Kelly going out, 15 million quid. I think that's good money, to be fair. I don't think Kelly's that good of a player. Got him for now, sell him for 15 million. That is good business, but only if you reinvest it into the squad. I mean, if we get 15 million for Kelly, there's 11 million there. For Miggy, is 25 million quid there. Even if you spent 10 million of that on 2 loan deals for this window to give us enough squad depth to get the Champions League position secured, if you can get yourself a right winger with a loan view to buy, and maybe a right-hand centre-half. I mean, the centre-half thing I'm not overly upset about, because Kraft's back now and he can do a good job as centre-half. I know a lot of people will be screaming, I'm talking about Chris. He can do a good job as centre-half, and Lascelles obviously on the way back in the background there as well, potentially. So I don't think you need the centre-half. But the right wing, massively, we need somebody in there. We need somebody in there to push Murphy for that position. If Murphy's form tails off, or God forbid he gets injured, because nobody else is going to go over there. You could shoehorn Joe Linton out there. Would he do a job? But Joe Linton seems like he's held together. I'm asking you now, there's talk he might be injured for Arsenal, but he probably have shots in his legs and he'll be able to play in that one big leg, that one massive left leg, all the veins in it. Easy to find a vein in that leg, but he probably will play on Wednesday against Arsenal. But we need Joe in that game because we need his physicality. But in a game like against Fulham, you don't need Joe's physicality. You need him to be better with the ball. You need to be smarter with the ball, and that's not his game. He really, really struggles at that, and that's where the squad rotation has to happen. He has to have confidence in someone like Louis Miley to come in and do that job. We've seen how good Louis is on the ball. Longstaff's not great on the ball either. He's a workhorse. He'll run all day. Willock has regressed so far as a player that he offers nothing off the bench. And I don't think he offers anything off the start. People are screaming for Willock to start that game at the weekend. I understand that for the squad freshness, which is exactly what I just said. But Willock is just offering nothing right now on the football pitch, and he missed that easy chance at the towards the end of the game, which might have changed the game for us when it was still 1-1, I think. And that would have been massive for Joe Willock and for Newcastle United, because fans are losing confidence in Joe Willock right now in terms of what he can bring as a player to the squad. But just to pause on that for a second, you can lose confidence in a player. You can criticize a player for not putting it in the football pitch, but all these horrible, rancid, toxic, vile trolls who have decided to racially abuse Joe Willock on social media platforms can fuck right off. That is disgraceful. It's disgusting. No human being deserves that in any walk of life. If the players missed a shot, the players missed a penalty, I don't give a fuck, right? Criticize the player, tell him on a post, say, my God, I can't believe Joe Willock missed that chance. It was so easy. What's happened to him? Nothing wrong with that. You could boom in the crowd for all I care. You don't ever throw racial abuse like that at somebody. And if you do, there's something seriously fucking wrong with you as a person, because that's not what the first thing out of your mouth should be. It shouldn't be a racial slur. A player critique, absolutely fine. You're warranted to do that as a football fan and as a person with free thought. But racial abuse of someone is absolutely fucking disgusting. Even Alexander Isak had to come out and, and absolutely, just disagree with it. I'm trying to think of the right word. It's maybe that angry. He was just completely disgusted by it. And he was right to do it. He was right to completely and utterly just say it was awful, it was rancid, there was no need for it whatsoever. Poor Joe Willock as well. That the man doesn't deserve that. He's a human being at the end of the day. He doesn't deserve that kind of abuse. So I fucking hate that. And that's one of the reasons why I'm spending less and less time on social media platforms right now, because it's just full of complete fucking arseholes. If it was a boozer, as Kevin Bridges once famously said, it's full of pricks in here, you'd leave. It's becoming unsocial media. There's very few platforms now where there isn't somebody out there just looking to rattle your cage. The engagement, debating before berating, that seems to be the thing of the past now. People just go on there to abuse people, to wind them up, to get a bite off them. And it's just completely pointless. It really is. It's one of the most glowing forms of a lack of intelligence from somebody to throw racial abuse like that out at somebody. It's just fucking disgusting. So yeah, I just wanted to say my piece on that. So going back to the performance as well, and the game coming over the hill against Arsenal, which I'll be at. I'm very concerned about this game right now. I'm concerned for a multitude of reasons. I'm concerned because Eddie hasn't rotated this squad enough, and I think legs are tired, minds are tired, bodies are tired. People have got knocks and pulls and tweaks. And because he hasn't rotated, he hasn't given the rest that they needed to be fresh for the games coming over the hill. I mean, this month is rancid for games, starting with Arsenal. Huge game. Yes, we're 2-0 up from the first leg, right? It would have to be disastrous in this game for us to chuck this away. But fucking hell, Arteta, old Lego Heed, is going to be telling Arsenal, go out there and get the first goal in the first kind of 20 minutes and then see what happens to that stadium. And you could hear the nerves against Fulham at the weekend. People were concerned about what was going on because, and again, this is all coming from a general malaise within the fan base. No signings for 3 windows now, no freshness, same old faces, no spark, nothing to be excited about. No youngster coming off the bench you can get whipped up and excited about. Nothing like that at all. It's the same old tired faces. And half of these players are getting linked for moves away from the club because they become so ineffective to the squad. You can't blame the fans for feeling a little bit flat, a little bit demotivated by this whole thing, But Wednesday, I generally do think that the fans may carry the lads over the line because these kind of games at St James's Park are absolutely unbelievable. You think about PSG, you think about the Southampton semi-final when Sean gets the 2 goals. I remember being at that one and, the whole stadium rattling the thunderstruck, which I really hope the DJ is going to play again on Wednesday night because that was fucking amazing. But these are the kind of games where the Toon Army, the crowd, the home crowd, make it an atmosphere that any player in a black and white shirt would be 10 foot taller because of that atmosphere. And I think the fans will bring it. But if the lads don't respond, if the lads don't switch on like they did against Fulham at the weekend, if the heads drop or they get distracted or the minds are elsewhere, they give silly passes away like Joe Linton, for example, then it could turn. It could change like that. It could become as flat as a pancake. The nerves will creep in, the feelings of anxiety. If Arsenal get an early goal, all of these things will massively curtail that energy that St James's Park will generate on Wednesday. And the lads need to be aware of that. They need to understand that. They have to make sure they turn up and do what they need to do on the Wednesday night. They have to do that. We'll do a match preview for it as well. We'll talk about who I think is going to come in. But there is some players in this squad right now that aren't, frankly, for me, aren't given enough to warrant a place in the starting lineup. Now, the Arsenal game is a difficult one to make changes. But, for me, straight away, if the tactic was to rest Sven Botman so he's ready for Arsenal, then okay, I get it. I understand it. He has to come back in because Fabian Schär is making so many mistakes. He looks so easy to get at that I would be petrified if Fabian Schär and Dan Burns start that game together as a centre-back pairing on Wednesday night. I really, really would. The midfield 3, I don't think Eddie will change it for this game because he'll want Joe Linton's aggression and Joe Linton will want to play. But if Joe Linton is injured, I think it'll probably be Sean Longstaff that comes in because he's got the more defensive-minded part of his game as opposed to the other players. I don't think he would put Miley in that massive game on a Wednesday night. And I think that's fair because, if the game gets a bit too physical, Miley might be swallowed up by it. I think the lad's a great player. I think he can survive in any environment, but I don't think Eddie thinks that. But the overall concern here is, Wednesday is one thing, and the lack of mentality for Saturday is another thing. But the biggest concern for this whole squad right now, in February coming over the hill where you're playing Arsenal in the Cup, you've got City in the league, you've got Liverpool, you've got Forest. These are massively, massively difficult games for Newcastle United. To put that squad, the same 11 week in, week out, because that's all Eddie will do, the same 11 week in, week out, to ask them to keep going and keep going and keep going, and given those levels of performances in these massive games that will burn them out with no players really to come off the bench and make a difference, that is a huge gamble by the football club. As I said, if Miggy's gone, he has gone. If Kelly's going, it sounds like he's going, and you've got 25 million quid there, sanction a couple of loan deals for some decent players to come in. And you can't tell me there's not enough good players out there. Craig Hope said that in his video. I just don't buy it. We've just seen Evan Ferguson look like he's going to West Ham on a loan to buy deal, 30 grand a week. Would Evan Ferguson have been a good backup striker for us on the bench rather than Willis Sula? 100% he would have been. Very different player to Isak, can hold the ball up well, can bring others into play, good in the air, strong. When a game starts getting a bit ugly and physical like the Fulham game did, our lads getting bullied, stick a big lump of a lad like Ferguson on to do something. Why didn't we make a move for him? Why didn't we make a move for Marcus Rashford? People are saying, the wages, Chris. How can Villa afford the wages? Because they did exactly what I said before. They traded, they played the game, they played the PSR game. They didn't want to. Emery didn't want to. The Villa fans didn't want to, but they knew they had to. And that's the difference between them and Newcastle United right now. I'm going to be on with the Toon Review guys for the transfer deadline show, and I'll be saying these exact things as well to the guys on the show, because this is the problem with Newcastle United. We haven't played the PSR game. It's played us. And I think that's the biggest issue with this window, not bringing any players in. But going back to the point of the aftermath, the Fulham game, disappointing, big distraction from them as a group of players. They need to be stronger than that. They need to be better than that. I think they underestimated Fulham. I think they disrespected them. And Marco Silva completely cooked Eddie from a tactical level. And that's the second manager to do it in the last few weeks. Iriola did it for Bournemouth. Silva did it. And sadly, those two managers have just laid out the blueprint to Mikel Arteta for Wednesday of how to beat Newcastle United at home comfortably. And I really hope Arteta wasn't taking notes, because that will be a big concern. I'm recording this before they play City today, so I don't know what's going to happen there. They could be in a massive slugfest for City and be knackered, tired. They could get a player sent off, a player injured. They could get hammered. They could win. I don't know. But one thing is for sure, Arsenal will be going into this game, and they are an absolutely brilliant side with top players, and they will throw the kitchen sink at us in the first half an hour of that game. And if our lads don't show stronger metal than they showed against Fulham, we will fold quicker than a deck chair on Whitley Bay Beach. But let us know in the comments below what you guys think about the aftermath thoughts here, the game moving forward, the transfer window, the Arsenal game. Are you nervous? Are you worried? I'm really nervous right now for that game. Really nervous. I think Newcastle could easily fuck this up if they don't sort that shit out. And what do you think about Eddie Howe's lack of ability to rotate the squad? Am I being harsh on him, or do you think that's a fair assessment? We always like to hear from you in the comments below. Drop a comment in. Let's keep it clean. We're just talking about football. I love to debate, but let's not berate. Let's not give people shit like the Joe Willock situation we were talking about before. It's vile. It's not warranted. And it just makes you look like a dick. So don't bother doing it. As I say, if you're a dick, you'll get the flick. Or if you're a prick, you'll get the flick. Whatever rhymes with flick, I will chuck that in there. But there you go. So that's me done, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Keep it evermore. Like and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next one. See you later.